Sally and I. So I will call us back from executive session. Thank you for your patience, and sorry we're a little bit late tonight. We ran over a little bit. Appreciate you all being here. First this evening will be call to order. Director Gregory, if you can stall that, please. Oh, whoops, roll call, excuse me.
Carol Gregory, District 4.
Hiroshiato, District 5.
Claire Wilson, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, District 1.
Danny Peterson, District 3.
Sally McLean.
Perfect, thank you. And now the presentation of the colors. If you all please rise from Federal Way High School JROTC.
Colors. Forward. March.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So our next item on the agenda is approval of the next item on the yeah, okay, here we go. So the next item we need to do is approve the agenda. So I motion to make 3 changes to the agenda before we make it. So item 8A will be Dennis Halsey from the Federal Way Kiwanis, who has a presentation to the board this evening. Item number 20 will be compensation motions out of executive session. And item number 21 will be policy governance pre-conference approval for the board in Vancouver, BC in June.
21, or are you going to do tonight? Because adjournment's 20.
Well, it's 19, 20 is compensation, 21, so adjournment will be 22. So that's my motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, I need a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of April 28th, 2015 as submitted.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now I recognize Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson, who has some student recognition this evening.
Thank you, President McAnally. Good evening, members of the board as well, and Superintendent McLean. At this point, I would like to introduce one of our wonderful school leaders, Principal of Thomas Jefferson, Adrienne Chacon, who will do the introductions. Thank you. Adrienne.
Good evening. Tonight I have the honor of sharing with all of you an incredible program at TJ. These guys are true Olympians. They are amazing. They are dedicated. They're at TJ 7 days a week sometimes, getting ready for everything they do. This is our math team, and it is incredible. It is strong. It is huge this year, and we are going to bring up our leader of the program, a legend in his own, 22 years at TJ, Tom Norris, to introduce the program.
Thanks. Could the members please come up front, please? Lucky to have a few of them here. Come on up front. Up in front. We're very lucky at TJ. We have a lot of hardworking students, and they're very dedicated. Our principal said that they work 7 days a week. That's true. We're here there Saturday and Sundays. They come to practice. They work hard. They do all kinds of things. They won state this year. The Mu Alpha Theta contest is a national contest. It's also a state contest. And the seniors who are here tonight, raise your hand if you're a senior. They've won it all 4 years at TJ, so they're 4-time state champions. When they were freshmen, the group before that had finished second dismally, so they came in and got 4 firsts in a row, so that's a great job. They went to nationals this past summer and placed 8th and in the nation, and I think they're a top 5 group this year, so we're hoping to be in the top 5. The superintendent had asked me to give you a little flavor of what type of things they do. So I'm going to ask a few of the students to step forward one at a time and tell what event they've done and what type of event that is. So Orgel Batsaya, where are you? Can you step forward, please? Orgel is a 4-time state champion, and if you can just face the school board. His specialty is speed math, and he placed first at state at that. So if you can tell the audience what speed math's about.
So speed math is an 80-question test in 30 minutes, and the questions range from many different topics, including probability, geometry, algebra. So it's really fast-paced. And
Okay, so they have to be very quick and fast, and Orgel is the fastest. So thank you. Next one is Justin Kim. He's our senior class. Better? He's our senior class president. Oh, give it to them. Perfect. Here you guys. I have a mic. I don't need 2 mics. Okay. There you go. Thank you, Tom. So pass that among students. I thought you really wanted me to have 2 mics, but that's okay. I can adjust. Anyway, Justin is our senior class president this year. This will be his 4th year at nationals. His specialty is mental math. Can you tell us what that means?
Okay, so mental math at state is a 40-question test where you have to solve every question mentally, so you cannot write down any like scratch paper or anything. It has to be done mentally, and I think math is from like, I don't know, anywhere from geometry, algebra to, I don't know, it sometimes go up to like pre-algebra, pre-calculus.
Pre-algebra.
It's a pretty hard test, but it's
So let me ask you a
doable.
question, Justin. Can you impress these people? What is 75 squared?
It's 5625.
What about 103 squared minus 97 squared?
It's 1200.
Very good. All right. So that's the type of problems you have to do very quickly. All right. Boris Barra is going to talk to you about topic tests. Topic tests are given at state and at nationals. Go ahead, Boris.
So for topic tests, there's just, I don't know, they're just specific for each category. Like, for example, what I did was sequence and series, which was my, this doesn't even work, which was my favorite topic. I don't know, it was just, it's just finding patterns, and it could be arithmetic or geometric, and I don't know, they're just.
And a topic test can be in any division: calculus, advanced algebra, trigonometry, and logarithms, for example, is a topic test. So it's a very specific type of thing that they study very hard over the summer and become an expert, and better than their teachers. They become teachers to us on that. So thank you. And another one really quickly, Richard Chung, who's a freshman in my BC calculus class, who did very well, is part of our Jeopardy team. What's a Jeopardy team?
So Jeopardy is basically a fast-paced kind of tournament. It's single elimination, and it's mostly based on problems that are very quick and fast, and one mistake can ruin it all. And so it's very important to be concise and be quick with your work, and also be accurate at the same time.
And they have a buzzer, and they have a team of 3, and so they sit at the buzzer, just kind of like the game show in a way. And so it's very fun. Jacinta Clay is the math team president this year, and she is going to talk to you quickly about Gemini.
Okay, so Gemini is a 2-person test. Most of these tests are individual and you take them by yourselves, but this is a much harder test and it's done with a partner. Last year I was a state champion in it, and I placed at nationals in it, but I forgot what. That's it, right?
Yep, that's good. And 2 more. The next one is Chalk Talk. And Hakeem Shibli, if you could step forward and talk to the crowd about what is a Chalk Talk.
So Chalk Talk is an event where it's basically a speech event in math team, and you're giving a speech on a specific topic that relates to math. And this year I spoke on the math of the Winter Olympics. So once you get that topic, you're going to research about it, and you want to see where the math is involved in that specific topic. And once you present it, you're given a whiteboard and a marker, and you basically write down some equations that you've memorized, and you want to make it seem relevant to whoever you're speaking to. So.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll bring up Sean Yee, our golfing champion, who's also a math wizard, and he's going to talk to you about relays.
Okay, so relays is a team test. We have 3 people in each test, 1 from each division, and it's like 8 rounds, and each round has 8 questions. And so basically, like, each person gets 2 minutes at a time, and then you pass it down to the next person of your team. So it's just like a good team aspect for a single test. And this year we won that in state, and last year we came in 8th in nationals. So yeah.
Thank you. So as you can see, these are real hardworking kids. They spend a lot of time, and there's a lot of different events. It's not just paper and pencil and tests. And so they spend the summer. They're going to give up their whole summers, correct, to work very hard this summer. We'll be traveling to Salt Lake City. July 19th is when the convention lasts. It's a week-long convention. It's held in different cities across the nation each year. Last year we went to Orlando, for example, and the year before that, San Diego. So good group of kids. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking time to recognize these kids. Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our agenda is Dennis Halsey from the Federal Way Kiwanis.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm Dennis Halsey. I'm the president-elect of the Kiwanis Club of Federal Way, and I'm here to present a check to you with Dave Larson, Judge Dave Larson. He's our president, current president. He would have been here, loved to have presented the check, but he's working with Action Club, which also Kiwanis helps support, another program to support children. And before that, of course, he was saying guilty or not guilty for several hours. So, first of all, I want to thank the Board of Education and also the school district for allowing us to use the concession stands over at the stadium. It's been a wonderful experience for all of us. We have a lot of volunteers. There's Jim Burbidge, who's the past president of Kiwanis, along with Jim Knapp, and then here's Karen Brigado. She's the secretary, and they put a lot of volunteer time in over at the concession stand. And so I want to thank you again for this, and we've got a check for $15,127.27 that we're going to award to you, and which is half the money that we make at the concession stand. And the other half, the Kiwanis Club of Federal Way uses. And where do you think the money goes? Do you have any idea where that money goes?
You've got it.
Scholarships. Goes back to scholarships and also supporting programs in the public schools at Federal Way. So it all ends up there, just that we get to choose where half of it goes. And you get to choose the other half. So we'd like to present the check, so if you want to come around and just we'd like to take a picture as we present the check to you. And before I forget, make sure you come to the stadium, buy lots of hot dogs. We want to next year we can bring you a bigger check that way.
So now's the time for public comment, and this evening we don't have any. Just to make sure everybody's aware, there are blue sheets on the back tables you can fill out to do public comment, but we will pass on from that at this time. And next will be superintendent comments from Superintendent McLean.
Well, good evening. It is, as always, a pleasure to be here, and I will keep my comments short this evening. I just want to, again, give a shout out to the Kiwanis Club, who work our concession stands through all kinds of weather and all kinds of events, and so I certainly have appreciated their hot chocolate when I was hanging out on the football field this last fall, and I know that this contribution of theirs will be deeply appreciated by our associated student body funds. Over the last couple of weeks, I have been busy working with our new superintendent, Dr. Tammy Campbell, trying to create some transition plans for the two of us. I know our new superintendent also has transition plans for herself, but that's been fun to do. Also had the opportunity to attend the key communicators meeting and had a conversation with our key communicators about the changing graduation requirements for the class of 2019. And so I just want to put that out on everyone's radar screen again. It's something we've talked about a couple months ago, but we're moving towards that point in time in our calendar year where we would like to be making recommendation to the board for their consideration. The next scheduled public conversation about our graduation credit requirements for the class of 2019, which is this year's 8th graders, is being hosted by City Vision at the 320th King County Library on Thursday, May 7th. Couple other things to share with you that might be of interest to the broader community in the next couple of weeks is the Boys and Girls Breakfast Fundraiser is scheduled for Tuesday morning the 5th at Emerald Downs. We have a strong partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, so like to remind our community that that fundraiser breakfast is scheduled for that morning. We also have in a series of board recognition nights, which I'm sure the board members will talk about. I mentioned the City Vision Forum, but on Wednesday, the 6th, which I know is a board recognition night, is also a sound transit public hearing conversation for the light rail options that are being considered to move light rail here into Federal Way. And you'll hear a little bit more about the sound transit options later in our agenda. And again, as we move forward through that timeline process, we'll be looking to the board to support a recommendation for our response. And with that, I know there are many great student events occurring in our schools in the springs between concerts and plays and other competitions, track. What else am I forgetting? So I hope you all, if you find yourself with a spare moment, take the opportunity to go enjoy some of the great work that you see our students performing outside of the classroom. And testing continues. Thank you.
Thank you. So now school board comments. Director Gregory, would you like to start us this evening?
Well, just very quickly, I had the opportunity, along with the rest of the school board, to attend. Well, let's see, Danny, you weren't able to make it. You were working. That's right. Our first board recognition event, which was at Sacagawea Middle School, and they are just amazing events. It's so exciting to see the number of students that are recognized, the number of families that come, and the number of adults who are volunteers and teachers and others who are recognized. And I really commend the board for continuing this practice because I think it means a lot in our communities.
Director Eto?
Thank you. I do also want to mention that the board recognition nights this is the first time I attended one, are really wonderful events, and it gets an opportunity to be able to cite volunteers that come and help the school, like the Kiwanis were recognized here tonight. And so I'm hoping that every one of these events is going to be just as productive and appreciative of all the people that come out and help the schools. Tomorrow at the roadmap meeting in Renton Technical College, Dr. Tammy Campbell is going to be speaking about equity, and so I'm looking forward to watching that talk. I attended We Day along with Director Wilson, and I'm sure she'll have plenty to say. It's kind of like, I don't know, Nickelodeon Awards connected with TED Talks with the Ed Sullivan Show all mixed together. But I'm hoping that we get out in the media the idea that Federal Way had a big part in kicking off that event here in this region, even though Seattle has kind of taken ownership and all the credit as being the launch site. So Federal Way and all the folks that put tremendous effort to get that thing launched, I wish they could understand just how beneficial this whole program is relative to the recognition of students that do all their volunteer work. I'm going to also take a little bit of time right now to talk a little bit about the policy governance topic that we added to the agenda. The Policy Governance Conference up in Vancouver, Canada, was something that we talked about earlier in the year before we had even selected the superintendent or were just entering the process. At the time, I believed that we could wait until we would, might get other organizations or speakers that would be able to tell us about policy governance in a regional area. Turns out it's going to be a great conference up there in Vancouver, and there is an orientation session. And the question later tonight is going to be whether or not we should go to that orientation session. Here's my perspective on that after the work-study meeting on policy governance last week. And I know a lot of folks didn't probably get to participate in that, or don't even watch the video, or rather listen to the tape. But in there, what was very critical is finally understanding what Director Peterson has been trying to get us to understand about policy governance, at least for me. Because it was a hard time in coming before I fully understood that it's not about the documents that we have. It's not about rereading them and finding out what's in it and whether it's appropriate. It's how we are operating in consistency with those guidances. So as an example, if we're to be communicating as a board so that there's no surprises, each and every one of us is in compliance. It's their personal belief. And then when we can talk about how we comply, we can talk about how we could do that better. And it's all about process improvement. And so because of the depth of knowledge that Director Peterson has in policy governance, it's important in my view that all of us have an equal plane to work from as we move toward getting policy governance integrated with the vision planning, the mission planning, the strategic planning, so that all of our vocabulary is consistent and understandable by the public and our team. So that's why I felt it's important that all of us would be attending that orientation session, and that's what we're going to be talking about later today. But I thought I'd take my time right now to just kind of point that out, because I was one of those that voted against going to this conference up in Canada, because I thought that maybe we could do that cheaper in a local venue. But I see the value of this now, and while we're going to be up there, I think it's important that we go and get on that equal footing and take that orientation session as well. I'll close my comments there.
Vice President Wilson?
Thanks. I have a couple things. One is I've had the pleasure of being part of a Leadership WASDA cohort this year, and Leadership WASDA is the Washington School Directors Association, and there's a cohort of about 20 school board directors from across the state that go through a year-long learning process together. And so have gone through two-day sessions and just wanted to share. The first one was on leadership and influence. The second one was on leadership and values, all related to school boards and school board work and kind of this idea of stewardship and greater good. And it goes right along with what Director Eto was talking about, but I thought I would bring something to share with my fellow board members that Alan Burke, who's the executive director of WASDA, came and shared with us, and it's a really nice two-page document on what does a high-performing board look like. And it has 12 different characteristics that we might look at. So along with governance, it goes along with kind of the governance and policy is the frame with which we live. And the performance is how we do the work within those frames. And so I just would offer that up as a quick little evening read to my colleagues if they are so inclined. Second thing, I did go to WE Day again, and I was pleased to have Director Eto there. Whenever it's your first time there, I was like, do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? Mm-hmm. And we got there at about, 7:30 in the morning before anybody came, and the Key Arena was silent, and there was nobody in there. And then all of a sudden, screaming came from the arena, and it was the crowd pumpers, and there was probably 80 students from Todd Beamer and other schools that had gotten there early to pump the crowd up, and they were practicing, and the day began. And it really is a wonderful time for students to feel valued and to reflect on what it means to make a difference. And that I think we were having the conversation about not having Federal Way called out, but I think there's also this sense that everybody in that room knows they're there because of what they've done, and some of that sense of goodness comes from themselves and that intrinsic thing, which is what we're trying to build into people, as well as from those folks that are sitting on their left and on their right. And so once again, it's an opportunity, it's a great day, and I think it just bodes to talk about kind of what kind of a global world we are, because if you go there clearly the folks that speak and the students that are there represent that. I will also say school board recognition is a favorite event of mine. And I always say it's not like going to church, and it's not like singing in a classroom. It's where you're supposed to make noise and jump up and down and use the flash on the camera that everybody tells you you're not supposed to use. And that's exactly what happened. And there's pictures, and there's flowers, and there's really wonderful sense of community there. And then the third thing I guess I want to say is that Director Eto and I, we've been spending time together, had a chance to go yesterday to the Executive Dow Constantine's State of the County, and it was held at Federal Way Community Center, and there were other folks from Federal Way there, and very exciting, as my friends on my left and right will tell you. Children and families are at the core of the work that's happening in our county and in our state. And all children, and children from the very youngest to the very oldest. And Dow Constantine's address was no different than that. And there was a huge turnout from all over. Then the only other thing is I am experiencing sports at a high school level for the first time, and have been spending lots of time watching softball. And it's a great thing, and I've done my first football games this year, my first softball. Now I'm going to move on to track, and it's great opportunities we provide for students in our district. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Dr. Peterson?
That was nice the other day too, Beamer playing Decatur in baseball, and seeing that program up at Beamer up and running. It's been fantastic. Well, I know SBAC this week is in full swing now. I know it was in half swing on Monday, and I think we're back to full swing again. And it seems like the couple campuses that I was at, that it was going okay. And obviously, it's our first year in it, and there's some fingers crossed right now, obviously. But I'm curious to see how that goes. I'm hoping that the process that we're able to make it on our different schools just as smooth as possible for those kids. There's always going to be little glitches, and we're grateful to our technology department. I was actually at one of the schools on Monday, going from class to class with the cow, making the computer on wheels, and making sure that the classes had enough computers in there, and they all had enough computers. So Director Mayberry, thank you for your team's work on making sure our students have what they need to take the test. But on Friday, I was able to battle the books. The legendary Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson was emceeing the evening, and it's just a whole lot of fun. You know, questions like this: in which book do we learn obsequious refers to a person who behaves as one servant even if they aren't? And you have all these elementary students have the names of the books, and they're going through trying to figure out which one, and they're talking to each other, figuring out which it is. And 25 different questions there in that round, and it was just fantastic just to see all those kids that were involved in that, the level of types of questions that they needed to be able to pull from those books. Had a great time. Nautilus ended up taking the crown this year, but everybody had a great time. Fun seeing a lot of those students getting little goodie bags there at the end, and just a great night. A lot of proud parents, a lot of proud principals and teachers all there, and just a great time had by all. Also was able to stop by the Federal Way Acceleration Academy. Director Blauser, it's working well, and from what I understand, we have already about 150 students, 160, 50. Now we have a couple transfers in there, but just and with that comes the problems. They were showing me back there today one of the places they're looking to try to convert into an office because of what they're experiencing, and and then on one counter they had the cup of noodles because we're still trying to get how are we going to get nutrition services, and if there's a way to make that happen to get meals there for students. And it's just the great problems of having of seeing something that's really taken off. And I know it's been a work in progress, and so it was just great to be by there and just see the good turnout of students there that morning. I had one student actually there today that was talking about how Internet Academy just wasn't a good fit for him, but how he went there and just how it was such a great opportunity for him. We know students all have different needs and stuff, and it was just great to see the lights come on in his education and seeing it be something that really opened up some doors that he's been looking for a long time. Also stopped by Truman, Principal Kulas over there, and we got Internet Academy there. We're serving 1,100 students with that, and it's just a great place. Great students doing some awesome stuff there. Also stopped by Mirror Lake, got to talk to our CIS Tricia representative there, and also got to hang out with Carmen Kaler, our family liaison, and the great work they're doing there. Stopped by Brigadoon, got to talk to Principal Odell, and just how she's approaching right now the TPEP stuff, and she just talked to me about how the changes that she's making and how important she believes the work is, but just how that has affected her time with students now and how she misses that, but at the same time too, some of the breakthroughs and some of the things that she's been able to work with different teachers. And it was just a great conversation, just seeing the things going on there at Brigadoon. And, also just the other people that are just, I think, I see them all the time, but just, I forget, just, it's the people that make it great. You have people in our security team that are just putting, and I was by a school the other day and there was an incident and they were there just taking care of it, and they're making sure our students are safe and they're aware of things going on in that community that nobody else probably in that building is aware of, but they have the pulse on that and they're making sure our kids are safe. And so, we appreciate Dave and his team and what they're doing. I also had a conversation with one of our bus drivers, Mike Majowski, and how he talked about how he knows every kid's name in his bus. He knows the birth date. He knows the successes going on, and just how he just takes that every day and just is so passionate about his students, just getting them from school and back. And just that's the kind of people that make Federal Way Public Schools great. We just have lots of people that just do their role day in and day out and keep our kids safe, keep them engaged, and it makes you proud to just be a part of something pretty awesome that we get to do here. Tonight we've been talking about different stuff. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about, just as I've been looking back to the last 4 years, and just there's been so many great things happening here. Tonight, as I've been reflecting and just looking at just the next 4 years, I feel like I need to just let everybody know that at this time I'm not planning on running this next month for re-election to my board seat. But I am planning on continuing the great work here till the end of this term. And so I'm planning on, there's some awesome stuff happening here, but at this time, just as I just have looked at reflection, that I'm planning on not doing that, and just wanted to let everybody know that. So, and I am more than knowing that the work is great out there, just want to end my term strong. And I know one thing I've learned about being on this board and being a part of this district is it's bigger than any one person. There's not one person that this district rests on, but it's the group of many coming together. And I take great heart in that, just knowing that there's some awesome people on this board, and there's awesome people that have come before me that are no longer on this board, and there's awesome people that are going to come after me. And for me, it's been a privilege to be a part of that process. And so my hope is that when I get done with this, that I leave a mark. I leave Federal Way better off than I found it. And I think we've been doing some pretty awesome stuff here, and I hope that this next year that continues, and excited for a new superintendent and all the great work that's happening. So thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to take a minute to make sure I beat this drum often about choice. Elementary parents and students have the ability to choose which school they'd like to go through April 30th. So I want to make sure that you take that opportunity if it's something that you want to do. And we'll continue to look at that to make sure that we are keeping student-centered and student-focused on what we do and how we take care of our students district-wide. Board recognition, it was a pretty phenomenal event, and I think, you talk about all the positive, but there's also tears, there's happiness, there's sadness, there's recognition, and it's just a time to come together to celebrate all the things that have happened throughout the year. There are 7 of those total. We do 1 at each middle school that pulls all schools together. So we have 6 more to go before us. We have 1 more again this week through Thursday. They go through the 3rd week in May. So we will continue to do that. And it's just, I want to thank my peers. It takes all of us to do it. And the more of us that are there, that it just is amazing to do that together and collectively and take that time to recognize. And whoever created that event is a phenomenal time. I also met with I am the Ledge Committee rep out of District Area 2 for WASDA. There are 4 of us that represent DA2, which covers 1/3 of the legislative districts, and we met a week ago on Sunday for 3 hours to talk about how can we do things better. We represent such a large contingency in King County. 2 of us were brand new to the board, and there's 2 that are senior, and we're just talking about how can we do things better, how can we communicate better, how can we do things differently when we're on the Hill. So part of that will come back to the board for us to continue to look at how we begin to integrate and be a part of those decisions as we go through. And the Ledge Assembly that happens in September, there's work in May and June and July that I will bring to the board for us to begin to talk about and see if we can't start being a part of that process in Federal Way. I also want to take a minute to recognize Dad Barney, who's a previous board member. My son got to participate a week and a half ago in track, so it is the time that all of that is going on. And so, you know, the work that's done there, the hundreds of kids that are there from all 23 elementaries, and you know, it's split up K2 and 3-5, and it's just, I mean, it's well orchestrated, it's well planned. It can be long days, but you know, everybody's there. It is, but it's, and Kiwanis is there, right, again, taking care of those kind of things. So it is just, it's an exciting time, and I just appreciate the work that he continues to do around that to make sure that we have elementary track and field taken care of in the district. I also want to make sure that you're aware that there is a grading survey that has been sent out currently. That survey is online, and I would encourage you to share your opinions around grading and what's going on with the grading piece. There are some questions in there from some recommendations that were made out of the Grading Advisory Committee that have been going on now for a year and a half. And so please partake in making comments around what's going on in that segment. And last but not least, I do the Battle of the Books. I have 2 students at Nautilus, and so I'm very proud of Nautilus K8 for winning Battle of the Books this year. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, Cindy Black, that came from, you know, that's your old stopping grounds too, so it's great. You know, it's neat energy, and it's pretty amazing. They were younger kids. It wasn't all 5th graders, right? So it's a 3 to 5 reading process. My boys went through it. It's 16 books. It's pretty intense when you get down to the district level for competition and what you have to know and how much. And so it's just a great way to celebrate. And so congratulations, Nautilus K8. And that's all I have for comments this evening. Thank you. Next, legislative report. Director Wilson.
Well, I have not much to say, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about budget and stuff for our district, which is probably much more interesting, or not. But what I can say is that the 106-day regular session of the 2015 Washington State Legislature adjourned on midnight Sunday, April 26th, and Director Gregory can probably attest to that fact. This week, Governor Inslee and the 4 caucus leaders are working together to agree on a start date for the special session. I don't think we have one yet, or do we? Oh, it is tomorrow. See, here we go. Special session, which will begin tomorrow and last up to 30 days. Also, at the time, the leaders were deciding that they were going to have their special session start tomorrow. They also were agreeing on specific set of bills and issues that'll be on the table, and most definitely things like the operating budget, the transportation budget, things like the plan for McCleary, and a few other little tidy things that are important. So we don't know what we don't know until things start to happen, and that'll be tomorrow with a special session. And I think Superintendent McLean will give us probably some pictures related to her thinking about, based on what's happening right now, what our best think is for a budget for the coming year. So I look forward to that. That's it.
Great, thank you. So next item is the resolution 2015-06 on the Lake Geneva House demolition. Cindy Winland.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Winland, the Support Service Director. And first, I'd like to just say thank you to Director Peterson for pointing out our bus drivers, because we have some really unique and great drivers behind the wheels of those buses. So thank you very much for that. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve Resolution 2015-6, authorizing the demolition of the Lake Geneva House and its outbuildings, which is a garage and a lean-to. I just want to let you know the demolition does not require the district to hold a public hearing, as it is not a school use for instructional purpose, or it is not the selling of real property valued at more than $70,000. We did have this property appraised through a state-certified general real estate appraiser, and the value is 0. I'd also like to point out that I was in contact by a community member who expressed some interest in obtaining some material from the Lake Geneva House, our site, and we will not be holding a public sale at the site, as right now any items of value have been removed from the house and the property. And there's also a possibility of receiving some additional savings through any recyclable materials from our contractor. So this work will be assigned through our small works roster, and right now we're estimating the cost at about $25,000. So if there's no further questions, I'd love to move forward on this work.
Any questions?
No. Mr. President, I move to adopt Resolution 2015-06, authorizing the demolition of the Lake Geneva house.
A motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much.
And now, Ron Mayberry, Executive Director over ITS, has some things to present concerning technology lease agreements.
Good evening, President McAnalloy, Vice President Wilson, board members, Superintendent McLean. I appreciate the time tonight to come in and talk about deployments. The leasing part of that will be towards the end of the presentation, but I feel that it's good to go through a little bit of history. We've used a very solid deployment formula over the years. This formula included deploying a desktop and eventually price adjusted to the point we could offer the choice to buildings to either choose a desktop or laptop. The strategy involved the purchase of an extended 5-year warranty in order to support a 20% replacement. A formula was utilized to determine the number of student and staff computers within the annual deployment. This formula drove the goal of 1-to-1 for our staff and support and 8-to-1 for our student computers. It was a nice, neat package that did this very well. The past deployment practices relied on school-based decision to be made as to which staff received new computers and when. The school received a set amount of computers, and with some of them aimed at student use and some for staff use. They made the final decision in regards to the use of this annual deployment. This has provided a challenge at times for buildings, as the formula accounted for the student head count in the given year, not in the past year. So as we had ever evolving staff counts, we wouldn't go back and adjust 3 years ago, only 20% being replaced at any given time. So that's been one of the challenges. This caused the staff ratio to lag, and computers originally intended for students being put into work to fulfill staff needs. While this formula we have used is padded to account for different staff models and the inclusion of itinerant staff, it was not always clear to buildings that in fact it did cover their needs, and there was a perception issue or possibly a valid concern. I would say that this has been a quality, especially true in our elementary schools, where shared staff who might be co-located at 2 or 3 schools. As I came into the position 2.5 years ago, I developed 3 goals. The first goal was to increase the number of student devices from what was the original goal of the tech levy. At that time it was 3 years old. And the goal was to maintain an 8-to-1 ratio. And I wanted to, of course, improve that. Needed to be much better, much better. Second goal is to make sure we had a separation in our deployment between staff and student computers, seeking to address the challenges that had been created in the way we deployed. This process began in 2013-14 school year. Lastly, I wanted to make sure all certificated staff had a computer that was sufficient to meet the demands of their job. So student deployments are now at, I did a little math based on an OSPI report we had to do, and we're now at about 2.3 computers to every 1 student. The other way around. Every device to 2.3 students, yeah. Now we're really putting it out there. If you look at across our various levels, we're real close at the 2-to-1 ratio though. And this has taken place across our district in part because of lower cost computers. There's been a numerous amount of different options hit the market. and because of increased funding from additional investment from the general budget amounting to $400,000 each of the last 2 school years. We started this process of learning about new devices in 2012-13 through our one-to-one pilots at Nautilus and Woodmont using iPads for grades 6 through 8, and the Android LearnPad at Sahalee in grades 6 through 7. These first pilots started in January and April of that given year, and we continued the original pilots the following year with the addition of grade 8 at Sahalee, so we expanded to the full 3 grade levels. This fall, we swapped out the LearnPad as it wasn't really meeting the needs of what we had envisioned for that school. So our 6th grade students were assigned an HP Windows 7 netbook. We added an Asus Windows 8 Transformer to Life Prep. That's a 2-in-1 type tablet device. And the HP Stream to Acceleration Academy, which is a real low-cost Windows 8 device. Considerations for change next year are also being discussed at Nautilus, Woodmont, and Sahalee. So probable departure from the iPad at those 2 schools, and the addition of additional HP laptops for Sahalee. Part of the increasing student ratio is the allowance of schools to make local decisions from a menu of choices. The first 2, and again, this menu was sort of created through those pilots. So we learned about the device, learned about the challenges, and those devices that kind of cut the mustard were pushed off to a menu of choices. Part of the increasing student ratio is this allowance of this decision from a menu of choices. The first 2 on the list are traditional school computers, which result in the least amount of new computers being deployed. And some schools made that choice to stay with what they knew. We didn't give them a lot of time to make that decision about 12 months ago. This fall, almost all went with some lower cost options, assisting in increasing those ratios. The next 3 computers on the list are all allow the school to increase their current year deployment by 2 or 3 times. So they range anywhere from about a $250 to $400, and our normal computers are about $800. With school choice the last 2 years, we're seeing roughly 60% of choice being around a Windows computer, 40% of the deployment is Chromebook, and just a very small amount of iPads. So student ratios are now at 2 to 1. We're not investing in extended warranties for any of these new lower cost devices. This is a new challenge with past practice, both in ITS and in our schools. Should we be covering the cost of repairing or even replacing these new lower cost devices? In the past, we haven't had to. Our extended warranties covered those. So that's an oncoming challenge, but one that, based on current data, would suggest it's still a better investment to repair as we go, rather than put extended warranty money into our partners' pockets. However, at Sahalee and Life Prep, where we have take-home models in place, we have purchased extended warranties in order to learn about what those things those strategies can bring to us in protecting a device that's being carried to and from home. And at Sahalee, we purchased something called CompuTrace, which, for no better description, could be called a LoJack of computers. It embeds something on the chips so that even if the student or family or person who gets a hold of that machine were to put a new computer image on it, as soon as it connects to the network, it pings that company and they can track it down, and they use law enforcement to do so. Our next challenge is to maintain this 2 to 1 ratio under the present funding. I would estimate most of these lower cost computer devices have a 3-year life expectancy. So as opposed to our old 5-year plan. In order to maintain this new 2 to 1 ratio, we'll need to be replacing 33% of our devices annually, and that'd be student devices annually. That's approximately 3,600 computers a year at the annual cost of about $1.5 million, and that's an estimate based on kind of that midpoint $400 device. So some devices, I've had quotes recently showing me Chromebook options all the way down to $179 a device. As previously stated, schools have had the option to select between desktop or laptops for staff. This has led to some buildings being fully desktop driven. We still have one high school that is all desktops for all their staff. Others fully laptop driven, but most are some sort of mix. The current practice gives buildings enough computers to replace 20% of their staff computers annually. The decision, as I stated, remains the deployment decision remains that of the building. So there are challenges with our current practice. While this deployment strategy has been sound for the most part, we've seen issues. The first issue is to often surface is the computer is barely adequate for most tasks by the year 4. So 3 years in, we're pretty solid. Year 4, it starts not meeting the needs of our certificated staff members. And in year 5, it's not, I don't know why anybody would remain in that computer, but they have to at times. So that's where they start dipping into student use machines at times. So another significant challenge has been with 2 new models being deployed each school year. So a new desktop, a new laptop every school year, every year, keeping them for 5 years. That's 10 different devices that our team is charged with trying to support. Doesn't even take into account the new 3 lower cost student devices that also kind of evolve. So it's a lot of things to support. Another significant challenge has been in the unequal distribution of computers to certificated staff over the years. I would say this is always, each building making these decisions, they of course apply a level of logic to their decision making, and they take into account all sorts of different demands that their various schools have. But there are people that do not always understand and become frustrated. And some of those do surface from certificated staff. Sometimes those arrive directly to me. Sometimes I hear about them in a roundabout way. So looking to find solutions for the staff. In order to answer these significant challenges, I'm literally proposing to blow up the past deployment practices. It is my plan to replace 1,500 district certificated staff computers all at once this summer. Their current staff computers will be redeployed for student use. There will be some of those that are now 5 years old that we would ask to be surplused, but a vast majority of them will be student use. The plan is to place all certificate staff on the same device. The device is the HP EliteBooks series, which is HP's highest level of durability and quality. The HP EliteBook 745 has an AMD 810 processor. It kind of gets into the weeds here, 8 gig RAM, ultra slim. But the point is, we're trying to give them a device that's more than sufficient out of the gate and should remain sufficient into 3 years. Teacher will have the computer set up in a dual monitor configuration, which gives them greater flexibility in the classroom. Kind of gives them the benefit of both a desktop and a laptop, the mobility. With this greater flexibility, I'm hoping to see certificated staff grow the habit of taking their laptops to training events. This will leave the classroom, the challenge with that is this will leave the classroom without a teacher computer at times. If we're encouraging them to go off to their training events during the school day with their computer. So consideration for extra computers for our guest teachers' use must be considered. That's how we get to so 1,700 is 1,500 roughly certificated staff, 1% for growth, 1% for hot swaps, and 140 for guest teachers. This is a proposed plan that I hope to bring on the consent agenda May 12th. So here's just a picture of this. This was out in the area on the second floor near IT. It gives you a little bit of an idea of how a dual monitor would work for a teacher on a laptop setup. On the laptop itself, the image that is actually being picked up by this document camera on the far right is projected both on their laptop and on the screen that their students would be seeing. While on their main screen, they can still be doing other tasks that they need to get done, such as taking attendance, maybe they're entering a grade, checking the data warehouse for important data, all those sorts of things. So this is a new to us in Federal Way, and possibly new to many districts across the state. The idea to replace certificate staff computers every 3 year. This 3-year cycle is closer to industry standard. And more important than it being close to industry standard, there's a reason the standard is that. It's the machines do age out. A lease strategy will help make this possible. The 3-year lease results in us only paying for a portion of the laptop package actual value. Current quotes have us paying for about 80% of the original value. In my estimation, this is the best strategy to help us support a 3-year refresh cycle. Along with a 20% saving on each laptop package, we're only paying sales tax on the actual lease costs. So again, a savings is realized. So this is a little example. Cost of the device package, if purchased, is $914. This is about a $1,500 retail machine. Total cost for 3 years would be $1.5 million. That'd be if we outright purchase it and used it for 3 years. Cost of device, if we lease it, we bring our actual cost of device down to $820. And then our total cost is $1.4 million. So it's a total savings of $173,000 over the life of the 3-year life of this. Oops. So this lease allows for the 3-year replacement cycle, helping assure that our certificated staff have a computer that's sufficient for the demands of their job. The Elite Book Series comes with a 3-year warranty, requiring no additional warranty cost. Our 5-year laptop had a cost of an extra 2 years of warranty rolled into it. That represented nearly 20% of our base cost. So 20% of the cost we were paying on our former laptop was all warranty. By deploying one certificated staff model that will stay in use for 3 years, we greatly reduce our support impact. The addition of a docking station, a 20-inch monitor, gives the staff the benefit of mobile computing while maintaining features of a desktop computer. That will be important in the change management of this. This gives all certificated staff dual monitor capabilities, allowing teachers to have a lesson up for students on their projector while taking attendance in the grade book or monitoring data in the data warehouse. I do see some future challenges with this, but I think some of this is addressed in this. Staff growth will be a challenge to this new plan. It always has been, though, even in our old plan. We need to make adjustments annually. The 1% I'm adding in there is intended to help with that, and the plan to adjust in year 2 should further that. The case of having additional teachers due to McCleary pushing or decisions to push class size down, that's just the reality of what we probably see coming. With mobility comes the challenge of breakage, especially computer screens, possible theft, or not theft, but theft, loss, those sorts of things. We have the capabilities to fix these in-house, so the cost of accidental breakage is not a good investment. We can use a fraction of what we would have to pay to make the repairs ourselves. Some concerns have been shared about securing mobile staff computers. Ensure there are computer locks available, which allow the device to be locked to the desk. Where I've seen that, though, it leads to the computer rarely being used as a mobile device because it's too much of a nuisance to unlock it. So that's clearly not my hope. I want us to keep an eye on those devices, but I don't want to get in the way of them being used in the way that we should be using them. We need our teachers to see the value of using their computers for day-to-day work, but also in their own acquisition of learning when attending training put on by our Teaching for Learning department, the ITS TOSA team, or their local school teams. We want them to model that. Access was the greatest challenge for our teachers, or so they say. With the technology now at 2 to 1, we've removed that obstacle and the barrier. We now need to sustain this ratio. Cart-based learning and 1-to-1 can be an answer, but both involve significant investments. They require good planning, continued funding, and professional development to bring true sustainability. And that last thing is the most important. To sustain it is to really bring our staff into understanding how to use it. We've begun the process of thinking and planning our next tech levy. Just as a kind of bringing to closure to this, that is coming to an end. 2016 is our last funded year. We've had some preliminary conversation. An advisory team will be formed soon to help guide our thinking. This advisory team will be comprised of various staff members and community members, following a similar model that was followed about 6 years ago. The goal of this advisory is to bring back a proposal for our next technology level. Keep in mind, strategically, this will need to be run during next year's school year. Moving our certificated staff to think about how technology can be more than just a substitute for tasks they've completed over and over. The SAMR model, S-A-M-R, will guide our IT TOSA team in helping teachers see into the future, helping to move from substitution or augmentation to modification and redefinition. Currently, as we use technology, any type of technology, there's always a substitution aspect of that or augmentation aspect of that. But really moving our instructional focuses needs to lead to us doing those modifications and redefinitions. Thanks for allowing me the time to present this to you and talk about some of the ongoing and future plans around computer deployments. And do you have any questions?
Board members, questions?
My question was, it's my age-old question. So I know this conversation, I believe, is around K-12. And where does early learning fall in the our tech conversations and the supporting? And there's obviously conversations and differing beliefs and philosophies around the use of technology with children in not in school yet. However, we have staff that are expected to do that, and I'm just wondering where in our district our early learning folks fall in this plan for deployment for staff.
So I'm going to go ahead and answer that question. Under current practices, we have 3 types of preschool programs, and our Head Start and our ECAP programs have historically been run within their budget allocation. So we would expect that their technology needs are being addressed through their Head Start and ECAP budgets. Our our preschool programs that are supported by student support services or special ed for our community-based and IEP are also really run within the parameters of the federal preschool funding, although I would guess that we are providing some supplemental dollars to support those programs. So I think to the extent that we have certificated staff that are that serve preschool students, students with special needs, they're captured in the 1,500 students. To the extent that we have staff that are working for Head Start and ECAP, they are not considered certificated in the traditional model. So again, longstanding philosophy of running Head Start and ECAP programs within their funding sources, and so that's where that's evolved from.
And it would be worthy of considering, if we're thinking about those are our children prior to coming to kindergarten, how we make sure that we're leveraging that, and that I know oftentimes the dollars don't come through on a yearly basis to think about replacements, or whether it works with the platforms and with the types of devices that districts are choosing to use. And I just want to continue, especially as we think about our teaching strategies gold and our work around school readiness and such, we just make sure that we're doing as much as we can to support our early learning classrooms, regardless of where the funding comes from, that they're kind of considered in that mix. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Director Gregory?
Thank you, Ron. This is a very exciting report. You know, you can see the change process that's occurring that's keeping us up to date with all the changes that are occurring in the technology. Are you anticipating bringing something similar to this for students, or will this be part of the preparation for the tech levy?
I think as we learn about the leasing strategy and how it helps, or the pros and cons of that, we would of course consider that. but with the lower cost devices, I don't believe it's, just on the surface, I don't believe it would be prudent to use that type of model with student devices.
That they're inexpensive
Just
enough
because of the
that-
low cost, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Ron, I don't see any downside to this proposal. I just want to have a extra question on what Director Wilson brought up. Is there any opportunity that we could have a big buy with either other school districts or at least pieces of our own school district? Because if everyone stays in their lane trying to buy computers, maybe there's an opportunity to save money if they're in with a bigger buy. So do we look at things like that?
I'm not sure about consortium purchasing and technology. We are a part of different buying consortiums where we see the benefit of those sorts of things. So our HP contract is based on both our own capacity to buy, but also on the consortium's overall buying power. And so, in working with our vendor, we do see a pretty, as I said, the machine it's a $1,500 retail for the device itself, just the computer, and we're adding in all those parts and driving it clear down to $900. So, yeah.
So, Director Ito, just in general, the school district belongs to at least 2 different purchasing cooperatives, and one of those is called the King County Directors Association, KCDA, which does a lot of bidding for equipment type purchases that all school districts who belong then to that co-op can buy off of. We also belong to the Washington State, through the Washington State Procurement Office. I forget the actual acronym for that one, but we can buy things off of state contracts. And the other thing school districts can do when any one of us individually go out for a bid, so not a quote for services, but a bid, we can allow what's called piggybacking in the interlocal. So we can create a bid structure that requires the vendor to offer a certain pricing to the district that's issuing the bid, and then also have to honor that pricing for any other school district that wants to come join that bid. So there are several ways that school districts work to try to, well, we don't all necessarily get together and say, oh, we're going to need 1 million computers next year, because I'm guessing some school districts use Apple, some school districts are, in variations on the theme. We do work cooperatively and have historically around many of our purchasing options.
I just want to say thank you for your work with this. I know when the tech levy passed and we had the rumor of money, and there was the mad, frantic move of society and education to grab the iPad, because the iPad was going to save you just throw it in the room and it would actually teach the children for you. And and you had large districts in California and other places buying everybody iPads and then not knowing what happens, what do you do after that? And I just want to commend your approach to this process, and you've gone slow to go fast. And tonight I kind of see some of the stuff where it's like it's time to pick up that speed. But yep. I feel like what we're doing is we're making an educated decision, and we're looking at some of our practices. We've tested out some different places. We've talked to some of our neighbors, and so what we're doing is we're finding something that fits us. And how do we move this forward? And you also touch on the challenges. These are great. Technology it's where it's with us, and it will be with us. Mm-hmm. But how do we continue to, with teaching for learning, and how do we do that together and really partner with that, and how can we do that better? Obviously your side, you provide the device, but then how do we continue to help? Somebody like my mom who's getting ready to retire this year from teaching, is proud that she can use email. That for her is, technology, and all this other stuff is just blowing her mind. And but yet, at the same time, too, even as she's going to retire, I know for her, there's just been that learning curve where she's starting to realize some of the amazing things. And I think that's just it is. It's a learning curve right now for across the board. Everybody has their comfortability with technology, and it's just how do you make that more streamlined, everybody getting on the same page with that. But thank you. I think this is fantastic, and we're definitely moving now, and I think how we steward this well and how we really launch this well will set us up for the story we can tell, and how we can come back with the next technology levy and say, hey, we did this, and here's what we're set up now, this next level. And so yep. I feel like that's kind of what we see some of tonight is it's kind of setting up that platform, because it's always just the next step and the next step, and it's always going to be a cost. It's not like these machines run forever, like you said. And so how do we continue to steward what we have well, and at the same time to give some not locking them to desks, but know that things will break, and that's okay at the same time too. So thank you.
Yep.
So Director Peterson summed it up. I just want to thank you as well for all your work.
Sure.
It's definitely, as we watch where it's going and head into our next tech levy, I appreciate all your work and understanding and taking care of us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Superintendent McLean to share state budget updates with us.
I didn't get this loaded before, sorry. I'm a little rusty.
No problem.
Okay, so good evening. I do appreciate the opportunity to stand in my old boots and talk to you about the 2015-16 budget development cycle. And for those of you who have worked with Jerry Carlson and I for a while, you know that historically, if you think about an iceberg, and I'm sorry, I don't have all my pretty pictures in here. If you think about an iceberg, you see a little bit of the iceberg above the water line, and that tends to be where I focus, is what do we know that's above the water line? And Jerry and Gloria, the mighty team of two, do all of the detail work, literally down to the individual employee level in terms of giving them increments on salary schedules and dealing with all of the department budgets. So I asked Jerry if I could have the opportunity tonight to see if I could put some oil in my rusty joint and get back into the flow of budget. And so she is giving me this opportunity tonight to get back in the groove. So here we go. This is a picture that we have used for a while. I like to always remind people that we get 3 different budget proposals in our state during any budget year. Some years we've had as many as 5, but this year we stayed with 3. The governor's budget comes out in December, and it's legally required to be balanced, and that's kind of our first set of budget drivers that we have to take a look at. The Senate budget has been passed and the House budget have been passed. And each of those budgets have different impacts on K-12. And I'm sorry, Claire, I'm not yet into the preschool budget. I'll just apologize up front about that.
Yeah, apology accepted. That's quite all right. It's about the K-12 budget right now.
Okay. So what's happening in this particular legislative session is the legislature is working to adopt a biennial budget for 2015-16 and 2016-17. They also typically make adjustments to the current year budget. Sorry, that should have said 14-15, not 15-16. So we know this is because it's the beginning of a biennium, this was a long session for the legislature, although they did get done a couple days early. Thank you. They have reconvened in special session because we don't yet have a final state budget. This is not a new place for us to be. I want to make sure that for those of you sitting in the board or in our audience that this doesn't make you nervous. We typically don't have a final state budget in a time frame that allows us to follow through with making our budget recommendations and budget adoption to the board. Because again, historically, we attempt to get that budget wrapped up by the end of June. So what we do, though, when we have the 3 budgets, is we take that opportunity to make some assumptions. And Director Peterson, I didn't grab your quote directly, but when you were talking about the technology money, but the appetite is big. People have heard about McCleary. They know the legislature is going to make another commitment to McCleary. There is a pent-up demand for everything, whether that is to replace 30-year-old boilers or to find better curriculum aligned with Common Core, or more importantly, to address salary and benefits for public education employees, because quite frankly, this is a labor-intensive business. It takes people to educate students. So I wanted to remind us a little bit about where we've been in our state related to the state-funded salary allocations. I know there's lots of numbers on this slide, and it goes back to 2007-08. And this is a funding formula, not an expenditure mandate, except for teachers. It's a funding formula. And you can see in 2008-09, the state provided $34,426 for a teacher who had a bachelor's and no years of experience. If you drop all the way to the bottom of that column, you can see that through the end of this biennium, the end of this year, the state is still below that 2008-09 level for our teachers, providing $34,048. That the difference is in the number of days teachers are paid for. Our state used to provide funding for learning improvement days. They were referred to as LID days, which I know now that Potts Legal has a whole different meaning. Sorry. But those learning improvement days have not yet been restored. And so one of the things I know you've heard me talk about in any role I've been in is the number of changes that our teachers are striving to implement in the classroom when there's no additional recognition of the professional development time or the work that's required to do that. On the administrative side of the funding formula, the administrative allocation was restored to the same level that we had in 2008-09, 09-10, 2010-11. It was restored to $57,986 in this biennium, and the classified allocation was restored to $31,865. And again, I'm trying to make a specific emphasis on allocation or revenue, because what happens is we move into a world where COLAs are passed through, is we get new revenue, but it costs us more money to process that revenue. This is 2015-16. You can see I'm showing you the biennial allocations that have been proposed in the governor's budget, the House budget, and the Senate budget. The governor and the House budget are aligned in their salary allocations, providing a 3% increase in 2015-16 and a 1.8% increase in 16-17. So our sort of general rule of thumb when we're trying to build budget assumptions is if an item exists in 2 out of the 3 budgets, it's likely to exist in the final adopted budget. Not always, they surprise us sometimes, but that's how we generally start framing our high-level changes. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion about various groups aligning with the Senate budget, but still, as a fiscal conservative, I'm going to look for the revenue streams that are going to have the biggest impact in terms of our expenditures to plan a budget around. The Senate budget includes a 1.8% increase in 15-16 and a 1.2% increase in 16-17. The administrative column is in red. I didn't have a chance to chase down the legislative language because mathematically that's only a 1% increase, not a 1.2. And that hadn't floated across my radar screen in any of the sort of budget briefs I was reading, so I just wanted to call that out and indicate that's why that's in red. In addition to salary increases, and whether you want to refer to them as COLA or salary increases, we know in all 3 of the budgets, so the governor's budget, the House budget, and the Senate budget, they are increasing the employer contribution to our pension funds. So our pension fund contributions always end up being a way the state balances budget, but at some point in time you fall out of compliance with IRS guidelines if you don't start putting money back into those funds. So the percentages vary between the 3 funds. We have a public employees retirement system, a school employees retirement system, and a teacher's retirement system. We have members in all three of those, and the increases range from about a little less than 2% to a little less than 3%. So the challenge for us, which we haven't had to face since 2008-09, so it's not maybe fresh in people's memories, is that when salary and pension increases come through the state, which is a great thing, I fully support those, we have to remember two things. One, not all the positions that we have employed in the school district are funded by the state, but we still give that COLA, or that required retirement contribution is still paid on every dollar that we're paying to employees. And then second, for the positions that are funded through the state, that salary allocation doesn't cover our actual costs. So for teachers, the salary allocation doesn't cover the tri-contract. For administrators, the $59,000 provided for administrative contracts doesn't really come close to covering the cost of what it takes to hire a principal or a central office administrator. And for classified staff, that $31,000 doesn't cover the cost of our average classified staff member either. So the 3% only covers the amount funded on that LEAP schedule. So basically right now, each 1% increase in required compensation, and when I use that phrase compensation, I mean salary and benefits, in this case specifically retirement, we have an unfunded cost of about $800,000. So when we talk about, when we get excited, and I'm going to show you the balloon, and then I'm going to put my Eeyore hat on and take all the air out of the balloon for the various budgets for the governor, House, and Senate, we know at a minimum we need to set aside $4.8 million in order to cover the unfunded salary and pension increases based on the information that we have right now. So let me switch. This is, I know you're not really going to be able to read the numbers, and I don't really expect you to be able to read the numbers. I just want to share conceptually what happens. So this is a spreadsheet that's called a pivot table that OSPI creates as a result of the budgets that are passed or presented by the governor, the House, and the Senate. So there are about 4 pages of budget drivers that get plugged into the 47-page funding formula. And then so there's OSPI is making assumptions, but this gives us another way to double check our own internal calculations. And, you know, these lines look great. The governor's budget is estimating we're going to get $15.2 million next year. The House is 18.5. The Senate is 14.6. Those are all numbers that would make any of us do a happy dance, okay? Now, here's the air out of the balloon. Anytime you see a line that says salary or fringe benefits, that money, as I talked about, that money comes in, but it costs us more money to process it. So that goes away, fringe benefits go away. I love the fact that the House provided some increase for health benefits for state allocated units. It's only in one of the two budgets, so that's not likely to happen, and if it did, it would cost us more money. Full day kindergarten, we're excited about in the House and the Senate budget. The governor didn't anticipate distributing any additional money for full day K. You might remember when we got the first big round of state funded all day K, we found a way to fund all day K in all of our schools. In the House budget, I think it funds 21 or 22 of our schools, and the Senate budget, all 23 of our schools qualify, I believe, or maybe it's 22 of the 23 qualify for that state funding. So to the extent that those are in the final budget, it will free up some dollars that we're currently paying for those teachers and all-day K programs that the state's not funding. K-3 class size and high poverty class size, we believe, Jerry believes that she found an error in OSPI's model, and their model hasn't been updated yet. So I'm discounting those numbers at this point in time because they don't appear valid to us. And I would just remind us that one of the interesting things in our K-3 high poverty schools, you'll remember there was a compliance factor where we had to exactly get 20.3 students in not just district-wide as an average, but on a building-by-building calculation. And so while our district-wide average this year in our high-poverty schools is below 20.3, so we met that standard, on a building-by-building basis, we're still losing about $250,000 because we're not at 20.3 or below in all of our high-poverty schools. You know, elementary family engagement coordinators, what we call family liaisons, maybe we'll get a little more money for that, which would be great because we'd like to expand those programs. I'm not really counting on any money necessarily for middle school or high school counselors at this point in time. That could become a more positive piece for us perhaps. MSOC, the material supplies and operating costs, $7.2 million. This is, I'm going to talk a bit when I go back to the PowerPoint about MSOC, but that number is fairly consistent in each of those budget proposals, so I am counting on seeing our material supplies and operating costs go up by $7.2 million, which will make our Director of Support Services do the happy dance, because I think you'll recall her presentations around asset preservation and our boiler needs and those kinds of things. I think, like many of our departments, they're tired of not telling us exactly what they need because they've been doing without for so long. But I think that there's certain pressures in the system, not to use the boiler pun, that we need to be paying attention to. The Alternative Learning Experience Program, that is really just a change. That's the salary and benefit pass-through for that money. It's not new funding for ALE. The same is true for special ed. That's salary and benefit, and for voc ed. Then you get down to LAP programs. All those new dollars are just for salary and benefits. There's nothing new assigned to additional hours in the House or the Senate budget, so not counting on that. ELL, or what the state calls transitional bilingual, that's salary and benefit. Additional hours of instruction exists in the House budget, but nowhere else, so I'm not counting on that. Highly capable, salary and benefits. Highly capable additional hours, only in the Senate budget, not counting on that. Oh, so I crossed out almost everything. See, I told you I'd take the air out of the balloon, right? So basically, the only thing I feel really confident in terms of new state funding, other than the salary and benefit increases, which will come in, but it will cost us more to flow out, is the additional MSOC money. And I know as budget deliberations continue, we will see other improvements, but I don't expect them to offset the impacts of the salary and benefit pieces. So let me switch back to the PowerPoint. You know, in addition to the salary and pension increases of $4.8 million, don't forget we have locally bargained agreements where we have some obligations to fulfill those obligations, and basically what I'm calling our dilemma for this coming year is the rock and the hard place. We've worked really hard to keep the new MSOC allocation focused on strategic investments. You might recall these bullet points from previous budget presentations. We have wanted to use that new MSOC allocation for curriculum and instructional materials, for staff and student technology, and for building maintenance. And indeed, you heard Executive Director Ron Mayberry reference that $400,000 increase in technology, which has helped move things forward. But with that $7.2 million, and a 4.8 hit coming from the state, plus our own locally bargained impacts, we're really looking at probably using almost all of that new MSOC to cover labor costs. Or we get to have the conversation about increasing our local tax collections within our legal parameters. So just wanted to lay that out there, because while there's lots of excitement about the legislature moving towards funding McCleary, and until the inequities that exist in that LEAP salary schedule, that document that got created and is referenced by budget, not even incorporated in budget, until those inequities between districts are corrected, and until the allocations more closely reflect market, we here in Federal Way are going to struggle with doing anything but covering salary and benefit costs. It's kind of the same place we've been for a long time. Want to just put one other piece out there, because I have to admit I hadn't really paid attention to I talked about the 4-page budget driver. I hadn't paid attention to proposed change, and I apologize, Representative Gregory, that I didn't notice this, because I'm talking to you now as your representative. But there are some local levies and LEA, or local effort assistance. Both those calculations are obviously mathematical calculations. They come out of one document called the F780, in case you want to go look at it. It's a 4-page mathematical formula. It has 3 line items in it referred to as, well, we refer to it as ghost money. I don't think the legislature likes to hear it referred to as ghost money, but it's money that would have been paid to school districts if the COLA had continued to come through, if I-728 had continued to be funded, and there's one other element in there, class size reduction, I think, had been funded. So there's 3 elements of ghost money in our local levy calculation and our local effort assistance calculation. And the reason that happens is that the way the local levy formula works, if your revenue is increasing, the amount you get to ask your taxpayers for also increases. So it's a parallel relationship rather than an inverse relationship. And so the same is true. As the state went through the recession and they lowered state revenues in order to offset the impact to school districts, because we would have had to lower our local levies, so we would have lost state funding and local levy funding, the state allowed the levy calculations to include that state money we would have gotten if it hadn't been cut. So the state revenue has been set artificially high in order to allow school districts to continue to collect levies from their local voters, which is the right mathematical relationship, right? If your state funding is falling, you should be able to ask for more from your local voters. That concept of the ghost money also exists in the local effort assistance calculation. So Federal Way is what's called a property poor school district, where it costs our taxpayers more money to raise $1 million than the statewide average. And the example I tend to use is that in Seattle can raise taxes by less than a penny per $1,000 of assessed valuation to raise $1 million, and it costs us 10 times as much. It costs our local taxpayers 10 times as much. And our average homeowner's income is not the same, as Seattle. So that burden is disproportionately high for our local taxpayers. And what happens if the ghost money, the proposal is to eliminate the ghost money, not from the levy base, but from the local effort assistance. And I don't know that is going to have a huge impact for us in 2015-16. It looks like about a $200,000 hit. But in 16-17, when that ghost money is eliminated, that will be roughly a $2 million reduction in local effort assistance to Federal Way. So local levies and local effort assistance come on a calendar year basis rather than a school year. So you always have to make adjustments for the changing formulas within a school year. So that's a significant concern for me, and I think for our taxpayers, as we look at continuing to watch what's happening with K-12 budgets in Olympia. Not every school district gets local effort assistance, and certainly as the various proposals for what are called levy swaps are discussed, while generally speaking Federal Way will be should benefit from a levy swap, we need to pay close attention to what's happening in the levy swap because of local effort assistance. I mean, we currently receive $11 million in local effort assistance, so it's not an insignificant revenue source. It's not under state law considered basic education, so it's not protected under the Constitution or McCleary. And I know it is always an area of but in my mind, it goes hand in hand with fixing local levies and LEA. I don't think you can do one without doing the other. So you can't do the state swap. I mean, if you don't do the state swap, you just do something with LEA. For those of us that are already operating with less, it just means we have even more less. Does that make sense? More less? Anyhow, that's just a quick synopsis of where we are with the state budget. I would remind all of us that we set sort of 3 guiding principles for implementing McCleary, certainly worth revisiting as we go into this next round of McCleary. But we had talked about providing relief to taxpayers and parents. We've done that by maintaining our tax collection, our educational programs and operations tax collection at a constant amount through the Great Recession. We've done that by eliminating fees directly to parents that were general fund fees. We've certainly worked hard to move towards market midpoint, and obviously I think we're all committed to any restorations or enhancements being affordable and sustainable, because it doesn't make sense to try to expand something and then the next year have to pull back from it. So there you hear me as your current chief financial worrier.
Any questions?
I just thank you for your presentation. This is I feel like every time we get a presentation from you on this, I think we should get like college credit or something, because
at least continuing ed credit, right?
Yeah. Just because your knowledge and just your care for our district is through the years has just been fantastic, Sally, and tonight is no exception of that. And this is really, I mean, the dollars is where it's at. A lot of times there's great ideas, but it's the dollars and how that gets funded that allows those things to move forward. And you and Jerry and that whole team have that understanding and contend for those dollars and really help paint that picture of what reality looks like. And so I just thank you for that tonight. And I know we have, as the legislature continues in their sessions and all that stuff, we're in that time where we're looking at what is going to be, the final reality for this next year. But this is really helpful tonight, and thank you for painting that picture for us.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. So next is the Rick Cerns, Assistant Superintendent from HR, to talk about the 2015-16 school calendar.
Thank you. Good evening, President McAnally and Vice President Wilson, members of the board, and Superintendent McLean. We had hoped to bring some amendments to you for our calendar for 2015-16 tonight, but there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done, but we wanted to update you as where we're at. These amendments are required because of some collective bargaining we did last summer with the FWEA, and there's a section in the collective bargaining agreement that we approved, section 7.2.8.1N, and it talks about a couple of different features. In this current school year, 14-15, we agreed to provide an additional 7.5 hours in January, which we did for some workload recognition and workload relief. And the provision goes on and says in the years 15-16 and 16-17, we will allocate 34 hours in total. And it left that open to further discussion, which could include some concepts such as late arrival or half days or additional paid time. This year, as I said, we provided the 7.5 hours in January, and as we've done in recent years, we've had 3 days in the teacher's work year calendar called data days, which are non-student days, In the final details of the 15-16 calendar, as I mentioned, we're still working on, but we wanted to share some concepts with you at this point that we're working toward, and we'll present the full amendment at the next board meeting on May 12th. The plan for implementing this provision in the CBA for the 15-16 school year that has been approved at this point by our leadership team, building principals, and the Teachers Association is that we'll take the 3 data days that were scheduled, including the 2 that were non-student days during the student school year, which were scheduled for January 28 and May 6th, and replace them with 6 half-days that will be set at a consistent time each month throughout the school year. There's 6 of them, so the current plan is to avoid probably November and December, and we're still looking at exactly where those will be placed in the best possible way. Again, the final proposal will be presented May 12th. We wanted to let you know where we're at in this matter, and we wanted to especially assure the board, the staff, and the community that none of the calendar changes that we'll be proposing will change the first day of the school year for students, which will be September 2nd, nor will they change any of the scheduled holidays or vacations. So the first day of school will still be September 2nd as planned. All the scheduled holidays and vacation days will remain the same, but in light of the this contract provision that we approved last year, we're looking at those options. So since it's still a work in progress, probably can't answer specific questions, but if you have any, I'm welcome to give it a shot. As I said, we'll bring them back that May 12th.
So we're in negotiations right now, and you're going to be bringing back whatever proposal you have for the board to accept on May 12th. Is that what I understand? So, and you're not asking for input right now on what the board would like to see. You're just going to let us know what you've been able to kind of figure out. Okay.
Correct. We, the board and the district and the association, approved the language in the contract last summer, and it gave some options to look at. So
yeah, I remember that.
Don't necessarily really call it negotiations, but we're just kind of working out how that works best for everybody.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is the Sound Transit EIS district position. Superintendent McLean.
I believe that the Director of Support Services, Cindy Wendland, is actually going to provide you with a brief overview, as she's been the one who's been able to work with Sound Transit and attend the briefings for me. I will say that all of the proposals that Sound Transit is considering to extend light rail into Federal Way impact school district property.
Good evening again. I'm getting to be a frequent flyer. So the district does have a sound transit committee, and right now that's Diana Seeley, myself, Tanya Nakamento, yeah, and Jason Nelson, and we also reached out to Greg Flynn. We're currently doing some preliminary discussions on the Sound Transit light rail, and we have also reached out to our district attorney, the City of Federal Way, and we are still planning another meeting with Sound Transit here probably within the next week or so. We're working with Kent Hale. We are going to be preparing a statement for the board we're hoping by May 12th board meeting. And after that discussion with board approval, we'd like to present our position to Sound Transit regarding their 4 options. Public comment is open at Sound Transit, and it will be closing May 26th, so we still have time. Just to do a little review, they have 2 primary corridors options, I-5 and Highway 99, with 4 alternative options. So we have the Highway 99, which takes us from, it extends south from Angle Lake Station on an elevated railway through the median of SR 99 to the Federal Way Transit Center. And the impact I'm just going to talk about right now is, because there's lots of impacts, but just what it does to our schools. So right now, the impact of Highway 99 alternative would create an elevated railway across from the new high school. The new Fedway High School, yes, there's pictures, I did, yes. And they have lots of options here, so, I mean, I think the green is what, I gotta look here.
So this is the green line, here's Federal Way High School.
Yeah, the green line is what they're actually proposing. The yellow are the options. And one of the options will actually cross back over from 99, cross over right around Dash Point, and then go under. It'll be a tunnel. And then it'll come back out and cross over again right at 304th and Pacific Highway. So that would be the alternative Highway 99. Then we have the I-5 alternative, which is Angle Lake next to I-5. The impact would be that, and that's just a straight shot, would be they're going to have to trench underneath the Mark Twain Field. And then it would also have an elevated railway in front of the EX3 leading to the Transit Center. And then we have the third alternative, which is Highway 99 to I-5. That's similar to the Highway 99 alternative, except for it transitions from 99 to I-5 right at the Kent-Des Moines Road. Same impacts as the I-5 alternative, which would be Mark Twain. And then we have the I-5 to Highway 99 alternative, which is, just similar to the I-5, which transitions again from I-5 crossing over to 99 right about at South 252nd. And basically, they're either going to be running it in front of our new high school at an elevation, or they're going to be trenching underneath Mark Twain at this time in the field, and then elevated in front of the EX3. In the meetings, they did talk about these are their options, but they're not opposed to hearing other options. So that's what I have for you tonight, unless you have questions or something I can take back to the committee.
Any questions?
No, I drive this area a lot. I know for me, I'm hoping that they will select B or C options, and A and D will get left at the table. I don't speak for the board right now, but just looking at that, I hope that those are the ones that end up prevailing. But
Your B and C options.
B and C's.
Are they
the I-5
hybrid?
alternate and the State Route 99 to I-5 alternate.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping those are the ones that will end up prevailing. I think the other ones will
Away from
be more of a
Fedway High
mess
School.
than anything else. So.
Director Gregory?
You're saying EX3? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's over Truman.
So
EX3 is
You're
the
talking
boys'
about
girls.
the exit? When
by
you
the roundabout?
Right by the roundabout, the I-5 roundabout.
Okay, but when you say EX, you're talking about the exit?
No, EX3, the Teen Center.
The
yeah.
Teen X Center in Truman.
Yeah, in Truman.
So we have 3 buildings on that property.
Yeah.
We have the Head Start building where we run a Head Start program. We have our Truman building that houses the Internet Academy and Life Prep Flex and Career Academy. And then we have a lease with the Boys and Girls Club for the EX3 Center. So so the most immediate impact is on the EX3 Center because Truman and Head Start are set back from the road, unlike Federal Way High School, which is being built.
So I'm
right on the
assuming
road.
then that we are actively engaged in sitting at a table and in conversation with Sound Transit and with our community, as you said, in this ongoing conversation, and that as we see potential options, that we would be putting those forward also as a district so that it would lessen any potential impact that might have on our property, as well as still meeting the intent of mass transit.
Correct.
That's, okay,
Correct.
thanks.
Yes, we've had a few meetings with Sound Transits where they actually laid out the maps for us. Go ahead.
Director Gregory?
Just one other question. You listed names of people that are on a committee?
Yes.
Are those all school employees?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Superintendent McLean?
I just wanted to give the school board information that the city council will be adopting a resolution under their current timelines by May 19th. So a proposed resolution was presented to the city's council called FEDRAC, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the name is for FEDRAC. It has something to do with economics and regional development. So I do know that that's been something that's been on the city's agenda for providing input during the time frame that Sound Transit has issued for their environmental impact statement portion of this.
Director Peterson?
Do you see it helpful? Obviously, your committee's doing the work right now, really looking at the options. Would it be helpful to help in establishing Federal Way's stance on whatever we feel is best, represents us, to have a board action item in the future of kind of a on behalf of whatever your committee recommends to put forth to Sound Transit or whoever else is part of that group of saying, we prefer this plan to another one or this setup?
I think that's what we're going to be coming
Okay.
back on May
Great.
12th and asking
Perfect.
just for your approval to go forth with what.
Thank you, that's what I guess I was trying to
Yes.
figure out.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Great.
So I just have a question around, I believe, and I would hope the committee would look at, part of the decision, and I'm sure the city's looking at this as well, is what Rainier Valley has as B&O tax benefits for it to run through their heart. And so I just hope that that's part of what we're asking from Sound Transit, is to understand what that impact is and what the difference looks at, because my understanding is that it really wasn't the benefit that I thought it was. And I think that helps drive some of the decision as well. And I thought that the city council had already passed a resolution saying that they wanted to go I-5. I thought there was one, yeah, they did. They've already done it once. So I just hope when we're a week ahead, but hopefully that there'll be some partnership between the council and the board on where we move in the resolution. So
We're looking at that, yes.
thank you.
I agree. I'd also like to point out one more thing, that Federal Community Center, Sound Transit will be holding a meeting there May 6th from 4 to 7, with 5:30 being the public hearing. So if anybody would like to attend that would, and we'll be there. We'll have staff there also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is EL 13 Academic Progress Standards that was presented by Assistant Superintendent Marie Vahar at our last meeting. And so we need to make a motion as a board for compliance or not compliance. So I will open it up for a motion at this time.
Good.
I move to approve the monitoring report of EL 13.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I second.
Discussion.
I'm assuming as we are moving to approve the monitoring report, we're approving it as in compliance in the motion. I don't know if
Correct,
you
in
like-
compliance.
Not just words, but
Would you like to amend that motion, Director Peterson?
I would like to amend the motion to read the last statement to say in compliance.
I have a motion for in compliance.
Sorry.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion around in compliance? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next motion is that we accept EL 13. Any further discussion?
I thought the presentation at the work study was fantastic. It was an opportunity to celebrate some of the great stuff we're doing, and this is one of those ones where there's been a lot of work done, and it was an opportunity to celebrate, and so I think it's fantastic, and I hope we continue that work of helping students accelerate their academic achievement.
Okay. Any other comments? The only other component I'll bring out, and it's part of what, I don't know where it lands, and I know there's been discussion, but I just want to make sure that we cover it for highly capable and our middle school portion around EL 16, that if there's verbiage that needs to be changed, whether it be within policy governance within the ELs, or if it is administrative policies, that we make sure we cover that and something is presented to the board. I've asked for the last month for that, so just to make sure that that isn't something that falls through the cracks.
Is that EL 13 or EL 16?
It's both. So it's,
Okay,
it's
okay.
whatever the school district believes.
Okay, that's
thinks
what I wanted to make sure, where
resides
it
the
best
whether
lies.
that be in
Okay.
16 or 13 and within administrative policies. But I just want to make sure that we kind of cover that. And I know it's been discussions.
So President McAnally, one of the ideas that I had was cross-referencing the administrative policy to the executive limitation, or perhaps vice versa, which is not something that we've done with all of our Ns and ELs, and but we have administrative policies specifically related to the highly capable program as required by OSPI. So again, just we can continue to have that discussion about whether or not that makes sense, but certainly it's on the radar screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So next item on the agenda is the supplemental agreement with Superintendent Dr. Tammy Campbell. So this is for additional 15 days of transition time as a supplement to the current contract between now and June 30th, 2015. And so this has been negotiated and it needs to be approved by the board. Yes.
I so move.
So we have a motion to accept it for 15 days of supplemental time. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And now item number 20 is compensation motion. So in executive session, we had discussions around two components of salaries. One is the salary structure that belongs to the executive director position, which there are 5 of those. And so at this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adjust executive director compensation for 2014-15, equivalent to market midpoint.
So I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
So it's a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the second item is for, as I think we're all aware, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching for Learning, Marie Vahar, has accepted a position. And so that is an open position. And our incoming superintendent has looked at that position and decided that that will actually become and have a new title in that position of Chief Academic Officer. So there's discussion around salary and how that is competitive. So I will entertain a motion at this time for that position.
I move to set the salary for the Chief Academic Officer at a range of $145,000 to $150,000 for the 2015-16 school year.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And our last item this evening is item 21 that we added that Director Eto had spoken to. It's the Policy Governance Conference that we are going to attend, but there is a pre-conference that actually digs into the basics of policy governance. So we did approve going to the overall conference, but this is the pre-conference, and so I would entertain a motion at this time for that.
I move that the board attend the pre-conference orientation session prior to the Policy Governance Conference in Vancouver, Canada in June.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So I just want to make sure that we also include our new superintendent coming into that.
Yeah.
So do I hear a
friendly amendment to add the incoming superintendent to our board directors that will also attend the pre-conference as well as the conference sessions.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay. So any discussion around including the superintendent in the pre-conference? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the superintendent for the conference, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now the main motion is the pre-conference for the board. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we are adjourned. Thank you.